Welcome back. To begin our program today, we welcome a guest whose name is synonymous with Niagara, host of Niagara in the Morning on CKTB, 43 years in radio, which seems unfathomable, 25 years at CKTB. Tim Denis, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us.
You put it that way, and I feel tired just being here, actually.
I want to tell you, we had Nicole Reguer on.
Yep.
Today is Walk a Mile in Her Shoes.
Yep.
You're there every year.
Yep.
You were there the first year, 15 years.
Yep.
You're everywhere.
Well, yeah, I remember that one distinctly because we started off the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes downtown at Market Square in St. Catharines. Downtown roads are not exactly the most even walking surface in the world, and that very first year, I think there were about 15 of us, and we walked out through the Market Square, out onto the road, and two of the guys behind me fell. One of them broke his ankle, and they really wondered after that first year whether they were ever going to do it again. But then we obviously moved over to the Penn Center, and it's been great ever since.
Well, the Penn Center move brought out that many more people as well.
Yep.
That you know, the fact that it's covered,
Yep.
the fact that the floor is even, it brought out so many people. But that's only one of the community events that you're involved with.
Yep.
In radio, community events becomes part of what's expected of you?
When I got into radio, I learned from a couple of really terrific men who had been around, and women who had been around for a long time. People like John LaRock, who had been at one of the radio stations here for years and years. And they said, you're in radio, and radio is local. It's the thing that we have going for us.
It's the only thing really, especially these days.
That you can't get anywhere else is local. You can get the music elsewhere, you can get the talk elsewhere, you can get all of those things. But what you can't get is the local connection. And I realized that a long time ago, and I realized I had a responsibility because, you know, the business had been good to me, and I wanted to make sure I gave back, but to the charities that I felt an affinity for, the kids' charities, the United Way, lived on a billboard for
That's right.
a week and a half years ago for the United Way, and the Children's Center. We've done a lot of radiothons for them, but it's a local connection because that's what keeps radio alive and makes it relevant.
Speaking of local, you've worked at almost every local radio station in Niagara. Your early days were at CHOW, weren't they?
At CHOW in Welland.
Blizzard of '77. You were.
I was
you
not
on
at
the air?
CHOW at the time. I mean, I wasn't at work that day, so I didn't get caught. But I was in Welland at the time of the blizzard of '77. I was there for the blizzard of '83, which a lot of people forget was almost as bad, and I lived out at that station for probably a week and a half. We couldn't get out. We had snowmobiles coming into us, people dropping off food. Yeah, it was an experience.
Well, as you know, I worked at CHOW a few years later, and it really is a hub, or was a hub, of the community. People turned there when their power went out. They would phone the radio station.
That's, again, what local radio always was. When I was growing up, you had local questions. You had whether you went to school that day, what the weather was going to be like that day, et cetera. You turned to your local radio station, and all these years later, it still exists for that reason.
I followed you to CHSC. I was there when you were working with the mayor of the morning.
Yep.
He was an incredible man.
Yep,
incredible man, and he knew everybody.
He was a broadcaster of the old school, which is not in any way form a denigration. John was old school radio, which meant he was a real broadcaster. He knew everybody in town, knew their name. I learned tricks from him on how to remember people's names when I went places, and it was great to learn from somebody like that who had really kind of set the bar up here.
When you moved to CKTB, was that your first time in a all-talk station?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird move. It was back in 1995, and I had been working at CHSC, and the owner of the station at the time, the Slate brothers, called me and said, you know, we like what you're doing on the air, and we have a slot open to do talk. Would you be interested in doing talk? And I'd done some news commentary things in the morning at CHSC, and they said, yeah, come on over and do talk. And so my thought was, I'm going to be Larry King.
Right.
I'm going to have a staff. I'm going to have people answering my phones, doing research. I'm going to have people running to get me coffee. And I remember very clearly, Greg Slate, the manager, took me into the studio when I went over there and sat me in front of the microphone and said, here's your telephone, here's your microphone, you start at noon, you're done at 6, good luck. No call screener, no producer. It was just, and no 7-second delay.
Yeah, back then.
And they said, just go and talk for 6 hours.
That's trial by fire.
I wanted to quit within 20 minutes.
Well, how long did it take you to feel comfortable directing that show?
25 years, Mike.
Yeah.
It took a while to get used to it because I didn't have a news person either at that time. I was on for 6 hours straight. The only newscasts were at noon and at 5 o'clock, and that was it. Took a little while, but I got used to it. I got into a rhythm and, went to some people I know who were doing talk in New York and in Michigan and said, how do you do it? And got some really good advice.
And that's something that's really common in the radio community, helping people out.
Absolutely. I mean, I've made a lot of friends in the business who've moved elsewhere, but I did some work in the States and worked at a couple of stations in Michigan and worked in Tennessee and Nashville. And so I got to know a lot of people who really helped me out when I was at a low ebb and figuring I can't do this. Did
you always want to have a career in radio in Niagara? Did you think you would be able to have one this long in the Niagara region?
In the beginning, it was like a lot of things, stars in your eyes. You're going to work here for a couple of years, move on.
Climb up.
You're going to be in New York in no time flat. You're going to be in Toronto. And I had my opportunities, and I tried it out. I just found that being close to home, I had family here.
Born in Port Colborne?
And Port Colborne, born and raised. I still have I still have a lot of family around here, but I just found that staying connected to the local community was better for me than going to a big city and wondering whether I was going to have a job every 5 weeks.
That's right.
Which is what happens. The pressure gets to a lot of people, and that wasn't for me. I wanted to communicate. I wanted to continue to help the local community charities, and the only way I could do that was to stay here.
Let's talk about some other things that you've done.
Yeah.
Theater.
Yeah, that was it was a tough call years ago when I was in the music business. I was in the recording industry many years ago.
We're going to stop right there because I brought it in. I brought it in.
You don't have that. Oh my God.
That.
Yeah.
I have that.
That was a skinny me. That was a skinny me.
1983?
Do I not look like Huggy Bear from Starsky and Hutch in that picture?
I think I had that tie with the piano case.
I still have it, believe it or not. It's the only part of that outfit that still fits.
You're still dining out, though, on the fact that you were, I think, Eileen Shania Twain's first appearance on record?
Yep.
Any man of mine.
We were in Nashville at the same time, and Eileen was sharing the same producer. We kind of shared expenses. We shared a hotel, we shared meals, we did what we could to keep going because in those days it was the classic starving artist, and Nashville was full of Canadians, and we were just two of them. And she sang on my album, and I sang on hers, and
wow.
She decided she wanted to stay. I, on the other hand, couldn't see myself on the road 365 a year, which is what the record company wanted. And I had a daughter here, and I said, I want to see my daughter grow up.
Did you see her talent at that time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a different kind of talent. To be quite honest, I don't think I'm telling tales out of school because she'll hate me for this, but she didn't want to get into country at all in those days. She wanted to be Pat Benatar or Debbie Harry from Blondie. That's the kind of stuff that she was recording when we were together down in Nashville. The country stuff came a little bit later.
Will we see you on stage again somewhere locally?
I don't know whether we're going to see anybody on stage again for the next little while. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in theater over the years. We ran a very successful theater out of the Port Mansion here in St. Catharines for 15 years, my friends and I. I'm on the board at Hamilton Theatre Inc. in Hamilton. Done a ton of stuff over the years. It's touch and go whether those small theaters are going to be able to make a go of it these days, whether they're going to be able to survive. We will get back to it, but how many of these organizations are going to exist? Most of them are very nip and tuck financially right now.
Last question for you.
Sure.
Any sights on retirement someday?
You know, I sit here and you tell me I've been there for 25 years. It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like 43 years in the business. And quite honestly, it's never even entered my mind. I'm going to work every day. I'm still getting the biggest kick of turning the mic on and talking and getting feedback. Some feedback's not great, but hey, that's the radio business. No, it hasn't even occurred to me at this point. So I'm hoping to do it as long as they'll let me.
Well, I'm sure they're going to let you as long as you want to. Tim, thanks for joining us today. And obviously, all of your listeners, thank you for not retiring as well.
Thank you, my
We'll be
friend.
back with more on The Source in a moment.